Good afternoon. Welcome to the October 2nd meeting of the Yakima School Board. A few announcements at the beginning. We have interpretation services from Jorge with Language Connection. If you are in person today and need translation services, we have devices you can use. Please check in with Barb, run for a device. Jorge, please translate this information.
Jorge Villaseñor, Language Connection. Si alguien necesita la ayuda de un intérprete, tenemos el sistema disponible. Gracias.
We offer live streaming options for this meeting. You can find the link on our webpage under Find It Fast and then Board of Directors, or go directly to www.ysd7.org/board meetings. There are two options for public comment. First option is for comment on agenda items only, and the second option toward the end of the meeting is for all other topics. There are two forms to sign if you would like to speak tonight, the sign-in form itself and a form that acknowledges you've read the guidelines for presenting. If you are interested in past meetings, you can find a link on our webpage to the YSD YouTube channel to view past meetings that were recorded and posted there. Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett?
Here.
Director Rice?
Here.
Vice President Villanueva?
Here.
President Walker?
Here.
And Director Navarro Jr. has been excused.
Now, Director Villanueva will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand.
Oh, do we have students today? Oh, we have students today.
Good afternoon. My name is Eileen Vargas. Today we will be saying the Pledge of Allegiance in English. Please put your right hand over your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, and liberty and justice for all.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Cristel Valdovinos y voy a decir la promesa de lealtad en español. Pongan su mano derecha en su corazón y miren a la bandera. Yo prometo lealtad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos.
Good job.
Thank you to our students from Barge. We also have the October Character Word of the Month, determined, having reached a decision, firmly resolved, por decidido, haber tomado una decisión firmemente resuelto. Next up, we have our land acknowledgement.
Today, the schools of the Yakima School District rest on the ancestral lands of the 14 confederated tribes and bands of the Yakima Nation.
The people of the Yakima Nation inhabited more than 12 million acres.
Across Adams, Benton, Chelan, Douglas, Franklin, Grant, Kittitas, Cliticat, and Yakima counties.
Today we honor the Native people who are tied to the land through history, legends, and cultures.
We acknowledge their descendants who live in the world today.
We thank the caretakers of this land who have lived here and continue to live here since time immemorial.
An acknowledgement is a simple, powerful way to show respect.
and a step toward correcting the stories and practices that erase Indigenous peoples' history and culture.
It also honors the truth.
As a school district, we'll continue to build upon our relations with the Yakima Nation.
Thank you to our students. We also have 3 proclamations today, Principals Month Proclamation, Indigenous Peoples Day Proclamation, and School Bus Safety Proclamation. So first up will be Director Rice reading the Principals Month Proclamation. Oh. Oh, okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, we switched it up on me.
Whereas the Washington Senate has declared the month of October 2023 as National Principals Month in coordination with the effort of the National Association of Elementary School Principals, or NAESP, and the National Association of Secondary School Principals, or NASSP, working with the U.S. Congress to designate National Principals Month and resolutions thereof. And whereas principals and assistant principals play significant roles in our education system by creating hope for every student in their buildings, by leading culture, systems, and learning, and by working tirelessly each day as visionaries, assessment experts, community builders, public relations experts, budget analysts, facility managers, special programs administrators, and guardians of various legal, contractual, and policy mandates and initiatives. And whereas principals and assistant principals work collaboratively with families, teachers, and district officials to develop mission statements, set performance goals, and objectives for schools to achieve educational excellence and maintain high curriculum standards and expectations for all students. And whereas the Association of Washington State Principals, or AWSP, honors such exemplary principals and assistant principals who have succeeded in providing high-quality learning opportunities for students, as well as their exemplary contributions to the profession. And whereas to honor and recognize this contribution of all school principals and assistant principals to the success of each student in Washington schools, our most valuable resource, and to encourage residents of Washington to observe Principals Month with appropriate ceremonies and activities that promote awareness of the importance of school leadership in ensuring that each child has access to a high-quality education. Now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim August 2023 as Principals Month in Washington, and I encourage all people in our state to join me in this special observance. Signed, the 12th day of September 2023, Governor Jay Inslee.
Thank you, Director Rice. Next up, we have Indigenous Peoples Day Proclamation. Director Beckett.
A resolution of the Board of Directors of Yakima School District Number 7, reaffirming the board's commitment to promote the well-being and growth of every district student, especially of Yakima's American, Indian, and Indigenous students. Whereas the board recognizes that the Indigenous peoples of the lands that would later become known as the Americas have occupied these lands since time immemorial, and whereas the board recognizes the fact that Yakima is built upon the homelands and villages of the Indigenous peoples of this region, without whom the building of the city would not have been possible, and whereas the board values the many contributions made to our community through Indigenous peoples' knowledge, labor, technology, science, philosophy, arts, and the deep cultural contribution that has substantially shaped our district. And whereas the board has established each and every student is to be celebrated and appreciated for the distinct and vibrant contributions made by sharing cultures, languages, ideas, beliefs, and values within a school community. And whereas the board has a responsibility to oppose the systematic racism toward Indigenous people in the United States, which perpetuates high rates of poverty and income inequality, exacerbating disproportionate health, education, and social crises. And whereas the board seeks to combat prejudice and eliminate discrimination stemming from colonization and to promote awareness, understanding, and good relations among Indigenous peoples and all other segments of our district. And whereas the board promotes closing the equity gap for Indigenous peoples through policies and practices that reflect the experiences of Indigenous peoples, ensure greater access and opportunity, and honor our nation's Indigenous roots, history, and contributions. Therefore, be it resolved that the Yakima School District proclaim every second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples' Day. The district shall encourage staff to utilize the second Monday in October to reflect upon the ongoing struggles of the Indigenous people of this land, and are encouraged to celebrate the thriving cultures and values of the Indigenous people in our region, and to stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples everywhere. Dated the second day of October, 2023.
Thank you, Director Beckett. And last, we want a place for everybody on the bus, and we want that bus to be safe. So we now have the School Bus Safety Week proclamation. Director Villanueva.
Whereas on each school day in Washington State, more than 10,300 school buses provide over 680,000 students with transportation between home and school, safely traveling more than 50 million miles. And whereas school bus drivers must complete initial and annual training and provide the highest standards of care for the students they transport. And whereas the school bus inspection program ensures the safety of school buses and exemplifies outstanding interagency cooperation between school districts and the Commercial Vehicle Division of the Washington State Patrol. And whereas the school bus driver instructors, shop personnel, supervisors, and support staff perform vital functions in assuring the safe operation of the student transportation system. And whereas ensuring motorists adhere to the rules of the road around school buses during the loading and unloading of students is critical to maintaining safe conditions. Now, therefore, I, Jay Inslee, Governor of the State of Washington, do hereby proclaim October 16th to 2023 as School Bus Safety Week in Washington, and I urge all people in our state to join me in this special observance. Signed this 24th day of August, 2023, Governor Jay Inslee.
Thank you, Director Villanueva. Next up on
President Walker, could
Yes.
I back up just a second? I believe we have some representatives from the Yakima Principal Association here tonight, and it is always fun for us to embarrass them by making them stand up here for a photo. In our confusion earlier with that, I think that didn't get passed along. So I'd like to, if I can, just introduce Hector Camacho from Davis and John Gonzalez from Wilson Middle School, two of our assistant principals. I hope they're here tonight. Come on. Well, I'm going to have everybody stand up by the bookcases over here. We'll embarrass everyone that way. And then we have four principals representing us here tonight. Aaron Thomas from Nob Hill, Eric Diner, Eisenhower High School, Tori Brennan from Barge-Lincoln, and Bill Hilton from Washington Middle School. If you're here, please come up for a photo. Thank you.
Okay. We do appreciate our principals here. I think we're blessed with some of the best principals in the state. And next up, we have
Could I just make a statement? As I was reading that whole list of things that that principals are responsible for. I think there should have been one on there that says other duties as assigned, because, I mean, really, why not other duties as assigned?
Thank you. Okay, trying to move on again. Are we ready? Okay, next up, we have one of our distinguished principals will presenting a report for Barge-Lincoln Elementary School. And I'd like to say had an opportunity to tour Barge-Lincoln last Friday, and I'm very impressed with what's happening here. And we're looking forward to our report from Principal Tori Brennan. Dr. Green, did you want to introduce Ms. Brennan? Or?
I can't say no to that. I'll simply add that I've shared this with you many times, that nobody makes a bigger impact than a high quality teacher in the classroom. Another component of that is where you find great schools, you find great principals. And we're very fortunate to be able to celebrate our principals collectively during this month. And it's a great honor for us to be in this building and have Tori, who was here as an assistant principal and has now taken over. And I believe, is this your second year, Tori? So it goes so quickly. To make the school her own through her leadership and to elevate it to new heights. So we all know that we stand on the shoulders of those who have come before us, and she has certainly elevated what we do here at Barge-Lincoln and really makes it a true community feel, serving the entire area. And you really do get that in the work that happens here, and seeing the way that dual language was rolled in, the attitude of our teachers, our community members, and our students welcoming us here today. So without further ado, I'd just like to recognize again the great work of Tori here as principal and her leadership. So thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for coming, everybody. And before I get started, I want to highlight all those little faces that perhaps greeted you when you came in. And that was underneath the help of our music teacher that we'll go visit later. But those kiddos were so excited and very nervous. And I also think highlights the fact that we are a dual language building, because most of you were probably greeted not only in English, but also in Spanish. So also, before I get started, I want to recognize my assistant principal that I could not do this work without, Miss Michelle Qualo. She is very humble and probably will not want to stand up, but she does great work. She is my right hand. So this is just our opening slide. I want to talk about who we are. And I'm going to read to you a promise that we have to each other as a staff here at Barge-Lincoln. But this was created together. This was intended just to be the opening slide. But kind of some keywords that I want you to focus on would be inclusive, diverse, swagger. We have a lot of swag here. Committed, and we're all about being a compassionate, relationship-driven community. So you're going to see a lot of those words over and over. And this actually was created one of the very beginning days of school. We created this, and it's now blown up into a big canvas in our conference room, where we have all of our weekly professional leadership team meetings. So we get to stare at that often, and it is also our opening slide on staff meetings. But our promise here at Barge-Lincoln is who we are. Okay, and I just want to highlight this because it's very important of what drives this school. Is we are a school that ensure we create a safe, equitable, inclusive, high-quality learning environment so every student thrives and succeeds. And another thing I say to the staff all the time is we meet kids where they're at. Okay, when you drove here, we drove past some areas that maybe are a little bit rough. There's garbage on the ground. There's belongings on the ground. Sometimes our kids are coming to school literally walking past transients. And it doesn't matter. When they meet the adults, we all meet them with a smile, with a hug. We say we love them. If you can't say you love our kids, then you shouldn't work here. So, and we want to make sure, and I'll talk in a little bit, but we also are very inclusive, where we are a neurodiverse community too. So here at Barge-Lincoln, we have 4 big goals. as part of our school improvement plan. I'm not going to go over a whole bunch of our school improvement plan, but I do want to highlight how we're doing and how we're doing compared to the rest of the school district. So after COVID, it was pretty dismal with attendance. Attendance is one of our focuses, is one of our goals, and our goal, along with the school districts, is that we have 95% of our kids attending. We want them to be to an 180-day school year to come 171 days. That's our goal. We have an attendance monitoring team that meets every week, and that team includes our family liaison, it includes our behavior specialist, includes our counselor, includes our school psychologist, includes those core people that are going to brainstorm how we can break down barriers to get our kids here. So back in 2021, we ended the school year at 87% of our kids coming, which was not great. Last year, we bumped that up to 91%, where we really implemented those weekly attendance monitoring meetings. Sometimes those meetings mean that a parent needs to go on a compact. Sometimes those meetings mean that kids need to be incentivized with a punch card or special lunches, highlighting the days that they were here. They create their own goals. And we ended at 91%. As of the 15th of September, which was a few weeks ago, we were sitting at roughly 93%. So we are like poking there. We are definitely getting there. And I really attribute a lot of it to our attendance monitoring team that I'd be happy to talk to you about at another time. Our second goal, I'm very proud of this goal, is making sure that our students with disabilities, we call them our neurodiverse community, that they are getting their needs met as well, and that we are making sure that they are meeting the ELA math and science standards according to the state. And as you can see, Barge, we're doing very well compared to the district. Okay, if you look, to give you an idea, we provide a continuum of services here, which I think is unusual. So we have students on individualized education plans for speech and language. We have students that go to a resource room setting, which might mean that they need social emotional assistance or they might have an academic concern. And then we have students in our autism settings. We have 3 autism classrooms. We serve roughly, Michelle and I were just figuring out, like about a third of our population, okay, are students that have special needs. But they are not just going to the land of forever where they have that IEP. Our goal, my leadership, is that we get them out of those services. And so we provide a continuum of services, especially for our students in those neurodiverse settings. So, for example, this year we have some first graders. They have autism. They're a student on the autism spectrum disorder, but they do not stay in that setting all day. So depending on what their needs are, they go to the gen ed setting for some of their day. They go get extra assistance in the resource room for some of their day. And then for some of their day, yes, they are in a very restricted environment. But based upon those kids' needs are what they are getting. And as you can see, it is working. So when we say we are an inclusive environment, it also includes those students with varying abilities cognitively. Another goal is at Barge-Lincoln, 53% of our students are second language learners. Okay, they're English language learners, which is over half of our population. It's a very large number. We're very proud of what each of our kids bring, and our learners are doing well. We still have a lot of growth to make, but we have been very intentional of making sure that all of the teachers understand that they are language teachers. They don't just go get their language services someplace else. We are serving them in the room as much as possible. And in ELA, math, and science, those English language learners are outperforming the district. If you were to back up pre-COVID, students with IEPs here at Barge-Lincoln and students that received language services spent a majority of their day, not a majority, but they spent a chunk of their day outside of their peers. So they went to a separate classroom. That is not very inclusive. So we have been very intentional of making sure that our kids are being served as much as possible inside their classroom next to all learners. Now, that's the academic side, but also at Barge, we are trying to engage our kids in exercising their bodies and brains. And I wanted to highlight this because here at Barge-Lincoln, we are the Barge-Lincoln Bobcats. We are very proud, and we have a new mascot. This is Blaze. So last year, our student body, with the help of our student leadership on the right, our student leaders helped lead the work of introducing Blaze at assemblies on special days. And we've actually included a student leader, and I would like to continue this work this year, as a student leader will be Blaze. So it won't be an adult in the costume, it will be a student leader, so that they take ownership in the work. But Blaze is very important to Barge. It's a face to Barge. We've worked very hard to make sure that this school is beautified and that they're proud to come here. And Blaze is part of that. So here at Barge, we like to say we're exercising bodies and brains. The last thing is, I know this is the 6th slide, but I wanted to highlight the work and the champion that the Ray Foundation, the University of Washington, and EarthGen has done with Barge-Lincoln. For those of you on the board that came last fall, you got to see the opening days of our mini pitches in the back. That was all due to the help of University of Washington and the Ray Foundation, which is a partner with the Seattle Sounders. When they were done in September with our big kickoff, which I know MLK just had theirs just a few weeks ago, they asked, what else can we do? And as the principal, I knew that, yes, we could have them come in and speak to our kids, and that would be fantastic. But what the Barge-Lincoln students need is experiences. They need to see that their end goal is not just to get the high school diploma. It is high school and beyond. And oftentimes what I found talking with my 5th grade student leaders is they didn't have beyond high school. It was, I really want to graduate high school, and then that's it. I'm going to go to work. And I wanted them to see that there are other opportunities for them, especially, all of them, that we need to get them out. So I asked the Ray Foundation and the University of Washington, with the Seattle Sounders' help, could we do something to get them some experiences? And they came through. So last spring, this was the last day of May, they chartered 2 buses for all of our 5th graders. They went on the bus. They took them over to the University of Washington, where they were greeted with the admissions team. They got to meet Dubs the dog, which is the mascot. They took them on the tour of the field, the football field, the library. They actually had a mini soccer clinic on the soccer field. We went to the Chicano Museum. They had an experience there before we headed to Lumen Field, where all of our 5th graders on the right were projected up on the, I don't know what you call it, Megatron or whatever it is. It was a fantastic day. Our 5th grade teachers went with us. It was a day that I think many of them had never been out of Yakima, and I'm sure it will be a day that they never forget. So I wanted to highlight that for the board, so that you could see the important work that the Ray Foundation, the University of Washington, and the Seattle Sounders is doing for the Yakima School District, because I know that they're sprinkling their love beyond Barge now, which I love to see. We will always take it at Barge, but I'm loving that they're now working with other schools as well. And what we'll do in a minute was we'll go take a tour around Barge. I have some of our instructional leadership team in their classrooms, and they're prepared to answer questions and talk to the board. But are there any questions?
Tori, can you tell us a little bit about your dual language program, please?
Yes, so Barge-Lincoln, I came in 2018, and prior to 2018, it was an early exit school, meaning that our preschoolers would come, at the time we had preschool here, they would come and we had a classroom that was spoken in Spanish, and then all the way up to second grade, they had Spanish instruction, whereas in the middle of their second grade year, they transitioned to English. And then in third grade, they were just thrown into English instruction. Then a few years ago, we were part of the first cohort where we implemented dual language, which changed that model. And so, to be completely frank, here at Barge-Lincoln, it was a smooth transition because we already had the staff and a very experienced kindergarten staff that took over our dual language program. It is now rolled up into second grade, also a very experienced staff because we were an early exit school. Next year will be different. So in second grade right now, they are 60-40. So 60% of their day is in English, 40% is in Spanish. And moving forward, it will be 50-50. And we will need to staff that accordingly. And so that will be, I think that's where Barge will see the most impact with dual language. But to be completely frank, it has been very smooth due to the early exit model. Mm-hmm.
I want to thank you so much for your presentation today and
You're welcome.
congratulate you on your attendance rate. That looks excellent, and a
Mhm.
couple pretty close to the target and a couple years early. So kudos on that. The data that you showed, showed that you're making good progress in a lot of areas, and obviously still a long ways to go and a lot more work to do. But appreciate the succinct way you presented that data. My favorite question to ask when I'm talking to schools is if the school board gave you a magic wand that you could use for whatever you needed to do to help your students achieve, what would you do with that magic wand?
I would go back to what I said to the Ray Foundation and the University of Washington's experiences. We have got to get our kids get them out and to see even just west of 40th. I give the example many times of talking with a student a few years ago about shopping at Fred Meyer, and they had no idea what Fred Meyer was. And it really highlighted to me that they really, beyond probably First, west of First, their world is very small. And so if I could give them a magic wand, I would give them the ability to have field trips and experiences in the Yakima Valley and beyond.
Well, are you able to share off the top of your head what it costs to take like the 5th grade class somewhere for a day?
I will tell you that Barge-Lincoln paid nothing for that field trip.
Okay.
So I honestly could not tell you. No.
Thank you.
Mhm. The kids did not have to bring anything. They were fed lunch, dinner, a snack. Buses were paid for. You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments for Tori? I'd just like to thank you also. My very first contracted teaching job was here at Barge-Lincoln, teaching special education. And it's fun to see the growth and the improvement here. I remember doing a home visit with one of my students, and the house had a dirt floor, and the chickens lived in the house. And that was out here on OPQR Street in that area. And I wouldn't be surprised to find some houses there are still pretty rough and pretty tough for kids. So, and none of my kids had ever been beyond SELA. That's the farthest they'd ever been. They were 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. So I'm glad you're paying attention to that need of helping kids see the world.
Yeah. I think we forget as adults. Yeah. It was eye-opening on the charter bus. They thought they were in Montana. Yeah. It was very cute.
So are we going to tour now at the end of your presentation, or are we
Yes.
supposed to do that now? So we'll take a break in our agenda, and then we'll gavel back in once we've completed the tour.
Okie doke.
this is Mrs. Fravor. She's one of our. Yes.
I saw you.
Oh, you did.
Never
Come on in. So she does a lot of. I don't know if you want to speak to it. Come on in. Yes, come on in.
Yes. I have autism.
Yes. So Mrs. Fravor does autism, and you'll see she uses picture boards for. Yes. You can explain it.
These are each child has an individual schedule for their day, and then they check their schedules, and from there they take them and put them on docking stations, which morning work, the docking station's right here. So they have learned to come in, check their schedules. I have a bell sound that I ring for the signal to check schedules, which is, I have to hide it because kids love it. Tells them to check their schedule.
So she does have some nonverbal students,
Yes.
and so this picture schedule is a way that it's a communication board
As well as these are communication boards, so it has different behaviors and yes, no responses, reinforcements. We have a lot of sensory needs, so this contraption back there is actually a swing. There's a trampoline, so I need time on to jump, to stretch. That big round is a tippy board, so.
Do you work with the kids to teach them sign language?
I do. I do. We do a lot with sign language, and I do have a child sign so we work with sign language as well as the pictures. I have Spanish speaking students.
Pictures work well.
We do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, because oftentimes the students with autism spectrum disorder, sometimes their behaviors escalate because they cannot communicate. And that's frustrating for families as well. And so Janae does a great job of bridging, teaching the student, but also teaching the family of how they could communicate. To help curb some of those really hard situations.
Yeah, because personally I feel like almost all behavior is a form of communication. They're communicating what they need and want. And so try to provide and meet those needs and help them too.
Well, do you guys have any questions for Mrs. Graber before we head on?
It is very sweet, isn't it?
So she has two other adults in here with her and 8 children. And she does have it, like I said, like I spoke to in my presentation, there are some first graders that she sent some of her kiddos to first grade for some services, and then some of our first graders that have an autism diagnosis but don't need a full setting come here for some of their needs. So kind of share kids, it's fluid. This is the room that we do but it's a highlight. They start as third graders. They get to travel. I've really encouraged Marie to get them out into Yakima, so they've been able to do farmers market. They've done Seasons Music Hall many times. They've done Rotary.
We've done Rotary, we've done the Kiwanis, we've done an ESD 105 convention that was here. We're possibly looking at being part of YPMEA in February.
They also got to play last fall before the Seattle Sounders game. So they got to go over, here they are playing at Capitol. They played at some churches with some of the adult music groups in town.
We played with the Yakima Men's Chorus where they did a piece in conjunction with them. And this is our summer field trip that we take every single year. It just keeps going.
It's just, yeah, it's amazing. Do you guys have any questions for Miss Webb? She volunteers her time, by the way, to do this. This is just something that she does out of her own love. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's fun.
Thank you. All right. Thank you. Come in. So this is a dual language. Yeah, I think he gets to store it for the team. Yeah, he is the lucky duckling. So this is Mr. Ramirez. He's one of our veteran dual language classroom or kindergarten teachers. He does dual language. He used to be an early exit kindergarten teacher. He has 24 students this year, so that's the most students that we've ever had in either our early exit or dual language program. So our we have another dual language kindergarten right across. They are full. It is a wait list now. So classroom and Dr. Romero, who also is a teacher. So I don't know, Mr. Romero, do you want to explain what you do during their intervention time?
During the intervention time for the kids that are coming, because we try to keep them in the classroom as much as possible, as Tori said. But we focus on our newcomers who are recent arrivals to the United States. We have many kids coming directly to us from Mexico. So obviously they have no English skills whatsoever. So we try to get them into oral language or language development first. Oracy comes before literacy. So we have to start to learn to speak the language, hear the language, play with the language on our tongue. And so I try to, and Myra tries to make it as a fun, non-threatening experience as possible, but we do go on over things that we will be looking forward to see how the tests on the WIDA standards at the end of our year. So we are beginning to do something this year, and I haven't talked to Tori about this even yet, is we're going to keep a log of each kid's language growth and goal this year and do a beginning year assessment, which is our last year's WIDA assessment scores, then a middle year assessment to see where they are in terms of their development towards language proficiencies, and then again at the end of the year, even before WIDA, because we won't get WIDA scores till after school's usually out normally, but we kind of have a predictor of where we think our kids are. And the thing that's different about it this year is that we want the kids to be in charge of their learning, so they're going to be setting their goals, saying this is what I want to be able to do, this is what I can do right now, here's my next stage, and it takes them through the stages and language development. So I can let you guys do a couple of these. I have a bunch of them right here if you want to look at them to see what we're doing. So you can see that it has the beginning standards, level 1, level 2, and they work through.
Do you guys have any questions for Mr. Romero? Because I know that we need to get back to the library. But Mrs. Rice, she had a great question as basically which grade do they serve? And they serve kindergarten through 5th graders. So, yeah. And as he said, we like to serve them in their room unless they are a newcomer or have pretty profound needs, then we would pull them out. Well, thank you, Dr. Romero. Yes, and we'll head back to the library. So if we Ms. Qualo will lead the way.
Thank you for going with us on our first school site visit / tour today. Field trip. We had a little indoor and outdoor field trip today. Just a reminder for the board, this structure that we're utilizing, you do have a longer slide deck than what Principal Brennan shared with you. It's in the board packet, and if you have any follow-up questions, we're happy to get those addressed for you. We are following the protocol that was developed to just highlight a handful of slides, and then that provides the time for us to see the campus, which was one of the requests that came out of one of the most recent board retreats. So I'm happy to have feedback as we continue through this process, but this was the new format tonight, so just wanted to draw your attention to that.
Thank you. And since you have the floor, Dr. Rodriguez, next up is the report.
Okay,
Improvement
wonderful.
plan.
Thank you. We also have this evening our annual request for board approval of our school improvement plans. And I know Barb will share the slides here in just a moment. They are also available for you on your computer. And I'm just going to back up. All right. So again, just a reminder, you have access to the full report. I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to go ahead and review that. So I'm just going to give a few highlights, and then I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Similar in nature to the report from last year, but I did want to highlight for you that our identification system has changed just a little bit in that Tier 1 includes both self-directed and foundational supports. These are, again, schools that have relatively strong instructional models, and there are focus supports in a few areas, but typically no support is provided through OSPI or through the state as part of the school improvement process. We also have schools identified at Tier 2, which is targeted. Schools that are identified in Tier 2 have 3 or more subgroups that have a score that would lead to identification. And Tier 3 is the comprehensive level. This is schools receiving the most intensive supports, which include coaching and funding through OSPI's Office of School Improvement. They are typically among the lowest performing 5% of schools in all students categories, or for high school specifically, a graduation rate below 67%. It's worth noting in this most recent identification cycle that when schools are identified as a Title I school, which is our entire district, that we are bumped up a tier. So we have some schools that you're going to see are identified as Tier 3. Their data actually would qualify them to be Tier 2, but because of the title designation, the state has identified us at Tier 3 to drive more supports into that particular building. This is a list of our schools that were identified in this cycle. Last year we were pending. We had not yet had this new cycle, and as you remember, as a result of the pandemic, there was a pause in the school improvement cycles. To look at 3 years of data, and with not having testing in some of our years, there was some cobbling together of years of instruction and outcomes from our state assessment system to do this identification. So these are schools that are identified in this cycle, and they are receiving some funding and support if they're at the Tier 3 level. So you'll see most of them listed here at the Tier 3 level. And that comes again through OSPI, Office of School Improvement, in order to meet the criteria required under Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA Act, which is federal law. So you can see here are schools that are continuing in the school improvement process, and then we have some that were newly identified with this last round of assessments. We also really want to take an opportunity to thank our staff and our principals for the hard work at schools that were able to continue to not be identified for improvement. And we have 2 schools in particular that were previously identified but are no longer identified. And so really just a huge thank you to those principals and the entire staff really at their buildings. So a big shout out for Barge-Lincoln, where we are today, Garfield Elementary School, Roosevelt Elementary School, Franklin and Wilson Middle School, Davis High School. And we would like to give a special congratulations to Nob Hill Elementary and to Eisenhower High School, who made their way out of school improvement with this last cycle. And I'm looking because one of them's behind me, so I just wanted to, she's right here, so you can tell her congratulations at the end of the meeting. So that's tremendous amount of work represented in that little data point right there. Okay. You do have links to all of the plans. There is a link there for you that gives you just the goals. That was a request from the board last time when I shared data with you. So you can have a little bit more of an easy read to just look at the actual goals. And like last year, because this was a piece the board expressed appreciation for, we continued this, identifying the goals by focus area. You can see again, we have 74 goals across all of our schools. Whether a school is identified for school improvement or not, we still require them to complete a school improvement plan, set their goals, think about their measures, all of that work. And so again, you've got that link to those, just the goals themselves. No surprise, lots of schools working specifically around literacy and mathematics. A lot of schools we are seeing are really focused on subgroups, particularly students with different abilities and English language learners. That is an area of focus and need that cuts across almost every campus in our district. So a lot of intentional work focused around that this year in each of our building school improvement plans. And we recently held individual data meetings with principals and their instructional facilitators and teaching and learning department staff to take a look at their fall screeners as well as their Smarter Balanced and Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science scores. And they really are drilling down into those subgroup data points to make sure that they have actions aligned to support all kids as really individuals and as members of different groups. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Jenny. I have a question on slide 7, school improvement identification. The list of schools that are listed as new, does that mean they weren't in any tier and this year they're brand new in tier 3 in, for example, Gilbert Elementary School?
Yes, that is correct. That means in the last cycle, they were not identified. That doesn't mean that they've never been identified, but in the previous 3-year cycle, which is actually more than 3 years ago due to the pandemic, they were not identified for services.
And you may have said this, but is the identification of school improvement, schools that are flagged for school improvement, is that occurs once every 3 years?
It typically is supposed to be every 3 years under, this
Okay.
is part of ESSA,
Yeah,
so
okay.
requirement, and it was put on pause with the pandemic. We had one full academic year, as you'll remember, when there was no state testing.
Right.
We had another where we did the testing the following fall rather than the year that it was due, and then we did a second round in the spring of that same year. Those lucky children got to do that twice in 1 year. And so we've got some data from pre-pandemic along with last year's data and the funky year data combined into a 3-year data set. Because there's been such a lapse, this next cycle is going to be 2 years. So they will not wait another 3 years to do identification. They're only going to wait 2 years and do another 3-year data pull. So they're always taking not just the most current year, but back a few years from that to make those identifications.
And then can you may have said this as well, the additional supports that are available, is that more money? Is it, what's the supports that are available at each?
Primarily, there is a grant available for schools that are in school improvement. So each of our schools that are identified at tier 3 are receiving some grant funds that are administered through the state that they can use to target the specific needs of their building based on the data. We also have access to a coach who is contracted through OSPI who's available for a certain number of days of support. And really, she can do all kinds of things, whatever it is that we need her to come in and work on. Janine Butler is our assigned coach this year, and she has a lot of expertise, particularly in the area of data and students as data partners. So we're excited to work with her in that arena.
And do we use the additional grant funds to support the school? Is it kind of building upon what we're already doing, or is there like really specific supports specific to the issues?
Both, yes, and the grants are separate for each building. So each building that's in school improvement has their own grant, their own funding allocation, and that's really under the purview of the instructional leadership team at that building, under the leadership of the school principal to determine how to utilize those funds.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
My only question, if I may, kind of dovetails off of what Director Villanueva was asking. That grant for the extra funding, is that a single-year grant, or is it based on that a similar 3-year cycle going forward?
We have seen grant funds available each year, but it is done annually. So it is not, here's your funds for 3 years, it's here's your funds for this year. And the amount of funds is determined by lots of factors, including what's available to provide through funding. So previously to this cycle, Yakima School District would receive some funding at a district level to help support this work. So you'll remember Dr. Pam Onsing, who oversaw school improvement for us. So a portion of her salary was covered with that grant funds. Because the number of schools that were identified for improvement in our state has drastically increased, not just in our district, but in every district across our state, there is no money left now for district level supports because they're providing some level of financial support to any individual building who's been identified.
What would be a typical ballpark figure that a building would receive?
Oh, it varies based on the size of the school, but it's not a tremendous amount of funds. 50,000, maybe 80,000 at the most, sometimes much less than that. It has to do with the tier of identification and which subgroups they're identified for. Yeah.
And you said that you said it was grant funding, so does the district have to first get or the individual school first identified as a school improvement school, and then they have to apply for funding? Or is it like a guaranteed funding stream?
It's guaranteed provided that you cross your T's and dot your I's. So we still have, it is a guaranteed, but you have to complete the grant paperwork. You have to identify how you will use the funds. You have to track the spending, and you have to file a report at the end. There's also requirements 3 times a year to upload your current school improvement plan into that grant system. So it is guaranteed. However, there are strings.
And is that, does the state legislature appropriate that funding, or is this kind of passed through from a federal level?
It comes to us via OSPI, which means that OSPI is funded through our state budget. I'm looking at Jake down there and he's nodding his head, so I'm going to say I'm safe saying that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Rodriguez? Thank you for a
thank you.
comprehensive report. I sat down and started looking at school improvement plans, and they are comprehensive, very detailed. Okay. Up, we have updates from members of the board. I believe Director Rice has a report from General Assembly.
Yes, we had General Assembly last weekend, not this past weekend, a week ago. And there were a record of 154 delegates. Usually we have trouble making quorum, which is 74. But there was one particular issue that a lot of smaller districts logged in and were a part of that discussion, and that was the removal of the weighted vote. Previous to this, for many years, if there was a call for a weighted vote, every schools were broken down into student FTE counts. So depending on how many student FTEs you had, that determined what your vote count was. So we were, I don't know, 11 or something like that. There were tiny little schools would only get 1. And then Seattle had, I think, 19. So it was a pretty expansive range. And of course, everybody felt that everybody else had a bigger benefit to them than they did. So it's been something that should have been addressed years ago, but it wasn't until this year. And so we spent about 3 hours debating that little piece of position. So we did lose some after that one position was done with, dispensed with, but we still ended up with 126 by the end of assembly, and that was 9 hours Friday and 9 hours Saturday. So I was pretty tired of sitting after 18 hours of that. So we are in the prioritization phase right now, and it happens to coincide with the election phase for WASDA. You may have received, or you probably did receive, an email from WASDA with a reminder to log in and cast your vote for, I think we have 3 positions, 1 legislative committee, 1 1 nominating committee, and the WIAA rep position for WASDA, as well as the president-elect for us, because this year the vice president has to come from the west side. And State Board of Education positions that are up for re-election, as well as ESD board positions that are up for election. So it's a pretty simple process. You log in with the password that they gave you, and just it populates with those positions that you are eligible to vote for. So that period of time is until the 16th of this month. So come the 16th, I don't know if it's close of business or midnight or sometime that day, that will all close. And then at some point after that, before annual conference, they'll tell us who the lucky winners were. But as with everything else, it's important that you use your voice and cast your vote. So I would encourage you all to do that. Are there any questions?
If you haven't done it yet, it takes about 5 minutes. It's real slick
It's real
process
easy.
to vote.
Martha, thank you for continuing to represent us as legislative rep and sitting through those 18 hours on a weekend.
Yes.
Thank
18
you.
hours of Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Any other updates from members of the board? I'd just like to, again, I mentioned it earlier, I had the opportunity to visit Washington Middle School and here at Barge-Lincoln last week. I was really impressed with the quality of teaching that I observed. At Washington, there were 2 first-year teachers that are just gems. I mean, they had great classroom routines. They had great ways of interacting with kids. They taught really good lessons. I was really impressed for those couple teachers whose rooms we were in. So I have a lot of hope for the state of education when we have first-year teachers that are performing at that high level. Any other updates? Okay. We have our superintendent's update, Dr. Green.
Thank you, President Walker, member of the board. Konnichiwa, Smith Sensei. Konnichiwa, Nagano Sensei. Invite you to come on up, if you would, to the mic, please. Members of the board, we're blessed today to have some of our Yamate leaders from Japan who are here in town to pave the way for our further partnership. As you know, we were able to reciprocate a visit over the summer that was made in April before accepting around 80 of their students and returning with several of our own. It was a wonderful experience, and I simply wanted to present them to you and let you see the two ambassadors that have been sent to us to assure that their children are taken care of and that they're safe and that we're doing everything possible to create a wonderful experience for them. I would call your attention just by way of reminder to goal number 4, which was the foresight of our community to focus on bilingual, biliterate by graduation. One of those goals, very aspirational at the time, and we creep closer to participation to a cultural exchange program. It was called out at the middle school level. I would anticipate that there may be a recalibration in the renewed process of the strategic plan that might encompass the secondary level, the upper level of high school, which is more in line with the opportunity that we have in front of us. But simply at this time, just wanted to thank these two gentlemen for their care and concern and the wonderful hosts that they were to our students. And if you have any words that you would like to share, please do so. And if not, we'll just let you go. But like to say anything?
Would you like to say something?
Okay. Thank you for taking time to say thank you. So, yeah, thank you for welcoming our students in last April, Yakima. So we are really happy to resume exchange program with Yakima after COVID. So it has been wonderful so our relationship has been able to continue for such a long time, so almost 40 years. So we hope that this bond will continue for many years to come. So, and I'm looking forward to Yamate students will have a good time in the next April. And we also looking forward to welcoming your students in the next summer. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Smith Sensei.
I'd like to echo Nagano Sensei's comments. Thank you very much for supporting us with our program. I think programs like this help students expand their horizons, broaden their minds. I think that's really important. Our students learn so much when they come to North America, and I hope Yakima students learn a lot when they come back they come to Japan. We're looking forward to coming next year, and we're looking forward to welcoming you to Japan in the future. Thank you very much.
Arigato.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us today.
We're really excited about the goal that we had of when we went to Japan. It was to see if we could create more opportunities, and it had been once every 3 years. And we're very fortunate to have a quick turnaround and step in for another district. So we will be running the exchange this year and the following year, and then we'll switch to an every other year rotation. So we've successfully built that relationship to an expectation that is beyond what existed previously. And as I said previously, thank you so much to the board, to our community for supporting our approach to language and the importance of it in our community, in our society, and just how that drives the learning of our students. Other information for the board, we just by way of just a quick share out, we were able to attend I was able to attend with several representatives from the district, Heights Church. We went and spoke to 2 of their congregations. You'll see there with Aldo, actually we were in his classroom earlier. He's one of the dual language teachers. Aldo is a member of the Heights Church congregation. We were able to speak about the wonderful partnerships that we have with them, and it's just the second year of the relationship and going to attend the services and to have some time to speak to the 2 different congregations. So that was a wonderful opportunity. We also then on the 20th of September held a faith-based meeting with our community. It was well attended. We had some competing meetings out there in the city, but we do see that we're a priority to many of our faith-based partners, and also that relationship continues to grow. President Walker already mentioned site visits during over the last several weeks. I was able to attend Whitney, McClure, Washington, Barge-Lincoln. Wilson was today. Just excited about those opportunities to continue to see the wonderful learning that's happening and talk to our leaders about our professional learning teams and how those continue to come together and grow and emphasize the importance thereof. Also, I was a speaker for the College Spark Washington Leader Initiative, so I was invited to speak at ESD and present for an hour to a group of mainly recruiters across all different components, public education, private education, the collegiate area as well, and private sector. It was a wonderful invitation, and we were able to build upon those budding relationships with other outside organizations. We had an opening ceremony at Martin Luther King Jr. for the mini pitch. You've already heard about the mini pitch here, so I would anticipate that we will have some film of the event. I know that the Sounders and the Ray Foundation do a wonderful job of putting those press releases together, and so it might be a few more months before we see that, but it was well attended. We had the mayor of Union Gap was there. We had the city manager from Yakima, 3 legislators. We had Senator Torres, Representative Sandlin, and they were there actually at the site. And then we had Representative Ibanez, I believe it was, from Quincy. I'm looking at, yes, he was at the evening session. So we've seen some really good involvement and momentum through our partnership with the Ray Foundation, and EarthGen as well was there. You may recall here when we looked at the outside facility, they were putting in basalt pillar benches and trees and gravel and designing that in conjunction with our students. The same thing has happened over at Martin Luther King. If you do have an opportunity to go to MLK, it's behind the school, so there is a little bit of a walk. You won't be able to just drive around and see it. You would have to park and walk to the back end between the school and Mercy Theaters to see the outcome. But we're really excited about that. We are looking at the possibility in another 2 years of having another couple of mini pitch sites. They're looking to put in 26 by 26 is the goal. So for the World Cup, the Ray Foundation has that commitment. So we're hopeful to have at least 6 of those fields if we can, but we definitely have 4 at this point for that event. And also by way of announcement here, we have been told that any school with a mini pitch will be able to participate in a tournament of the 26 schools, and they're talking about having them play in Seattle for that finals if our students make it. So we've got a really good shot so far, and we're excited about that as well. District directed PLT occurred our first day, which was a Wednesday. Board may remember approving some Wednesday options once a month. So that it did occur this last week or a couple weeks. Was it last week? The 27th, I guess it was last week. Time flies. And so we still have reports coming in. Obviously, change is challenging in that, and we're finding that there were some things that we need to kind of iron out in that, but we're happy about providing that time and not just expecting things to happen without any reciprocal accountability. And so having that in place has been a benefit at this point. And then the last item that I'd share with you is that there is a link to what's called the Superintendent Playbook. I believe this is from a magazine called District Administrator. In that magazine, you will see, if it's up here on the screen, but you do have access. We had an interview that took place of our Deputy Superintendent, Stacy Locke, with respect to, I believe it was safety and security. You see there why school safety is a shared responsibility. And I believe she's on the docket here this week to speak again to Centegic and the work that's happened around that device and creating an opportunity for us to put every building in lockdown quicker than any other medium in the entire country. So it's only contingent upon how fast you push that button, click that button, and lock down a building. Stacy, do you have anything to add? I know that we had something that happened here recently. Is there anything you would add around Centegics or your conversation with district administrator? And if not, that's perfectly fine. Just want to make sure you had an opportunity to add anything if you so choose.
I appreciate that. They did Centegics did a case study on the Yakima School District and the work that we had done in layering that. And that article went out, I think, about a month ago. And since that article has went nationwide, we have been peppered with people asking us to talk about what we're doing and how we're doing it and how we've been successful. And so, yeah, tomorrow I will be speaking on a podcast out of Philadelphia. back east for them to talk about what we're doing and how we're doing. So, yeah, we're very excited to be able to share our success story. So thank you for your support with Centige. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We hope that's a afternoon podcast and you're not at like 8 a.m. Eastern time. That would be really rough for you, but we'll see. 6 a.m. Yeah. And that concludes just the update today. We're thankful for the support that we continue to receive through each of you, and we invite you as we go through the calendar just to seek opportunities that you have to join me in a site visit or to attend any of the events that are listed. And there are always multiple events of which to attend. So with that, I'll pass it back to you, President Walker.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Dr. Green? Okay, moving to calendar updates in future. Oh, I do have a question. Can you send us a copy of that article about Centegix?
Oh, yes.
I'd like to read that.
The case study that we
The case study, yeah.
Case study, yes.
Interested in reading that. Thank you. So calendar updates, you received a hard copy as part of your paperwork for today's meeting, and it's also listed in board docs. I'm not going to cover everything individually in the calendar. It's all there. Maybe you want to highlight a couple of things. The WSSDA networking calls on Thursdays, I found those to be very educational and very helpful at times. And you're hearing from districts around the state and then from the association. And so it's kind of a nice touchstone to know what's going on around the state with board work. Anything in the calendar that anyone would like to especially highlight? And again, a reminder that you also have that electronic calendar where you can load it into your own Google Calendar and look at all of these offerings will pop up in that calendar as well. Just remember to let Barb know if you want to do one of the school visits so we don't have a quorum. Okay, we have arrived at the first opportunity for public comment on agenda items. Are there any takers?
Not at this time.
Next up, we have our financial director, Mr. Cooper. Approval of cancellation of outstanding warrants.
To the board, President Walker, before you is a legally required cancellation of outstanding warrants under RCW 3905-45640, I believe. That's pretty close. Well, there's an extra zero in the O. So before you'll notice when I'm speaking of interest to you, is the lengthy list of parents on the attachment. That's because there was a refund of the yearbooks the year prior, and those warrants, of course, were not cash. So the next step in the process is if the warrant is not cash within a year's period, it goes to cancellation. And then there's another year after that, the district is contacted, and we will cash that warrant. We issue the warrant, provide it to the parent or individual. And then after that, it goes to the state unpaid property. So you've probably seen heard on the radio, 1 in 5 Washingtonians have unpaid property. That would be what happens to these warrants after all is said and done, legal property in the state. So I appreciate action on the resolution. Or cancel warrant for the state. Any questions?
Do I hear a motion to approve resolution 1.23.24?
I move that the Board of Directors approve Resolution 01.23.24, cancellation of outstanding warrants.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the resolution 1.23.24. Any other questions or discussion? Barb, would you call the roll, please?
Director Beckett?
Aye.
Director Rice?
Aye.
Vice President Villanueva?
Aye.
President Walker?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.
Next up, we have report on policy 1000.2.8, compensation and benefits. Ms. Marietta.
Thank you very much. This has been posted to your documents for approximately a week. There was a slight adjustment from last year. As you are well aware, this next year we are anticipating I need a little bit more money than the revenue that we are taking in. So the slight adjustment has the addition from last year's with the loss of students taking place over the last 4 years. The Yakima School District has positioned itself to be fiscally sound and transparent, alerting the board of directors of this year's operating budget, which will have a drawdown of the reserves by approximately $14.4 million. The budget was approved in August of 2023. Other than that, it is the standard report in which we have posted year after year. With that, I'd like to see if there's any questions.
Questions or comments? Okay, does this require approval? Or just a survey monkey on
It
this?
should go for survey.
This should go through survey. That's what I was thinking. Okay, so I'm assuming that will be out within the next few days. Next up, we have policy discussion on policy 1000.2.9. Dr. Green.
I think we've actually skipped, we went from the approval of resolution with Jake, and we skipped the report of asset protection. So if we could go back and.
My feelings were a bit hurt, but I'm ready to.
So Jake first presented
I
D1
see,
and then he had
see. Oh,
E1. Yeah.
Then we went to E E2.
I have a mouse with a mind of its own. Yeah, we skipped the second opportunity. So we did approve the resolution cancellation. Now we have the second opportunity for public comment.
There are none.
Then they skipped number 1 under policy governance. So we go back to number 1, asset protection. Okay.
Good evening, members of the board, President Walker. There are no substantive changes to the policy provided before you, and along with the evidentiary matter, we are in compliance with no exceptions. Of course, we could ultimately decide on that when it goes to survey, but I would recommend adoption. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Cooper? Okay, we'll do the survey monkey on that one as well. Now, back in order. Policy discussion 1000.2.9. Dr. Green.
Yes, wonderful. Let's see if there's an attachment there. So there's not. Okay. So in 1000.2.9 is policy is communication and support to the board. It should be noted that in section 5, it lists the following. It says, fail to develop an annual calendar of topic areas of presentation to the board to include, but not limited to, and then it lists several different programs. So my question for you is, this is an annual school year presentation that is part of our policy, and it lists special education, highly capable programs, migrant bilingual, athletics, transportation, food service, and guidance and counseling. We have, looks like 5 of the 7 already scheduled, but the board knows that you've already received a calendar of items for presentation. So my question to the board is the remaining 2 items, which is athletics and guidance and counseling, those are currently not scheduled. So I would have to make a revision, and we would have to shoehorn those presentations in over the course of this year. Or if the board so chose, you would certainly amend the policy to not include athletics or guidance counseling services in the yearly presentation. But it's really up to you. I just wanted to call out that in that section 5, it does specifically list numerous, it looks like seven different presentations, and that was not taken into account when that calendar item was put together. So I guess the question is, are these topics, the topics of special education, highly capable programs, migrant bilingual education, athletics, transportation, food service, and guidance and counseling, are these still yearly update priorities for the board? We are a big district and there's other programs, and I think that's one of the challenges is being familiar with all of the different programs out there. And if we're filling each of those yearly spots with these 7, it becomes very difficult to see any of the other type of programs that are out there. And then if that is the pleasure of the board to continue with this policy as as listed with the 7 mandatory areas for presentation, then we'll make it happen.
There is not a copy of the policy.
No, and
For us.
again, the ones that we're scheduled to present are special education, highly capable program, migrant, and bilingual,
Right.
and then as well as transportation and food services. In fact, those 5. What is not currently on our
Right.
scheduled is athletics and guidance and counseling. Those different categories.
Plus any other programs.
Plus in you.
Plus any other.
And there are many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, like dual language and other programs like that.
which is a good example because we had the ends goal of dual language that was presented upon, but had we not had that, we would have skipped over potentially some of the.
Mr. President, I'm looking at the policy here, and it looks to me like the policy hasn't been adopted or maybe modified since 2017. And if that's the case, if it's been that long, we should probably have a discussion of this at our next retreat. There are options here with the number of school site visits, et cetera, of places where things can be changed. But obviously, those priorities were set for a reason back when they were set. And if we're going to change them, I think we should have a discussion about it.
I would agree. I think that we shouldn't limit to just those 7 either, and we may want to look at it like a 2-year cycle on some of those key programs and just readjust that whole policy, my thinking.
Wonderful. Thank you. We will make a note and have that as a retreat topic. I will just plant a little seed that it wouldn't be a bad idea if, so the seed planting, this could be something that is developed in conjunction with the board at a retreat or with the board president. And then you wouldn't need to have all of the items listed, but it would be revisited yearly. So I'll just plant that right now and we'll revisit this in its entirety during our next board retreat.
That said, would it be possible, because of the fact it seems our meetings have gone relatively smoothly within and reasonable amounts of time, to shoehorn those topics in this year, because we haven't heard athletics in a while, we haven't heard from counseling guidance in a while, so.
I am willing to take the magic wand from Director Villanueva and make that happen if it's the desire of the board. So
Magic shoehorn.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the magic shoehorn, yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm thinking that it might be possible to work those in, and we can look at that and get those reports sometime this year. Okay. Any other questions or comments about?
Just want to clarify then, at this point, though, we're looking at addressing it during the next board retreat, correct?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Any other questions or comments?
Just a comment, want to acknowledge President Walker and members of the district for doing such a good job with our new meeting formats and keeping things moving in a efficient manner. As someone who works full-time and has a pretty busy schedule, I especially appreciate the efficiency in which these meetings are run. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Okay, that said, there's no need for executive session today. So if there are any other comments or questions for the good of the order? And thank you all for being here. Thank you, Barge-Lincoln, for being great hosts. Meeting adjourned.